All right. Hello, Urban Faith. So glad to be with you again. We are excited to have another wonderful author with us, and she's sharing from her story. I love to be able to tell people's stories, to share people's stories with our community. And so today we have Faitth Brooks with us, and she is sharing from her memoir. It was called Remember Me Now. And you can find it everywhere, but Urban Faith, welcome, Faitth Brooks. I'm so glad to have you here with us today, Faith.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. So, Faith, as I was going through your book, honestly, I kept saying to myself, it's like you're telling our story. I know so many people who have similar experiences, who have been raised in different places and confronted with what we know is white supremacy, right, in our culture. And especially these last few years, trying to navigate, okay, so what does this mean for me now as a Black Christian? And I feel
Mhm.
like you really gave us um not just a story that we can relate to, but some ways that we can work through what do we do now. And so my first question for you is really, what inspired you to take all of your experiences and write the book, right? To tell the story here in paper this way, online. I appreciate it. Why did you decide to write the book?
I always wanted to write a book and be a writer. When I was little, I was probably about like 8 years old. I would write my own little newspaper, and I would stand out in front of the grocery store. It was a Kroger, and my mom would take me to Kinko so I could copy it, and then I would go and solicit, even though you're not supposed to. But they thought I was cute, so they let me do it. And I would just sell my little newspaper, and I would ask people if they would buy my newspaper for 10 cents. And I just remember being so young and early on, knowing how much I loved writing and I wanted to tell stories.
Mm.
And my parents really fostered that gift in me, and they gave me space for that. There wasn't anything that was too small. And so I think just that little seed that they planted in me, if you want to write, write. If you want to speak, speak, and just letting us speak and tell stories, it really bubbled up in me this, sense of creativity. So as I got older, I thought to myself, there's so many moments in my life that I need to write down or I need to chronicle. And so I would just have this open document and I would just write away different things that I wanted to remember. I didn't want to forget, that I thought this might be in a book one day. And obviously, I didn't know when that day would come, but
Right.
when the day did come, I had so many different pieces of this book that I had already written from when I was younger, because I was really just trying to prepare myself to be able to chronicle these things.
That's so important. And I appreciate you talking about how this started for you that young. I mean, I think about, honestly, I have a daughter now that age, and what that encouragement could mean, because she's like thinking about writing. And speaking of that, you talk about so many of these experiences that began when you were a child and how you were moving from one space to another. Shout outs. We're in Chicago here, Urban Faith. So I could relate. You know, just being able to find yourself grounded in community young, especially in the Black church. Can you talk a little bit about why that was important, that grounding in Black space, in Black church in particular, as I know so many of us find that as kind of our grounding space?
Yeah, I feel like, my dad wouldn't have had it any other way. Like, he loves the Black church, and I think that he really like wanted to make sure that that was instilled within us, learning
Mhm.
so much about our culture, the way that we approach faith, and just there's just such a rich culture in the Black church.
Yep.
And I'm like, it's hard to explain, but if you know,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's so beautiful. And I just think that that experience, like, you just see everybody that not only looks like you, but you have this shared sense of community and a faith that is really kind of, has that belief in like perseverance. When I was in white church, it was all about suffering, and I just never could relate to that. I
Mm.
remember telling the pastor's wife at the time, of a church I was working at, and I was like, everything is sad. Your songs are poor, broken, centered, sad. I said, I need a song that's like, I can make it through to tomorrow,
Yeah.
but like God's going to make a way for me, because life can be really hard, and so I honestly feel like that foundation for me in the Black church, just of my faith and the belief in hope and victory, like that has carried me through so many hard times. I did not really get that in a lot of multicultural church spaces. I
Hmm.
found that in the Black church. Not only that, but just the reverence for your elders
Yep.
and the community. Like it's just different, and um I just think that it really shaped me a lot as a, woman, and just in my faith journey.
For sure. One of the things that really sticks out to me about your book in general, and you kind of make this, it's a focus for you. It's definitely a dedication that you make. You write this for all the Black women out there, for your sisters, you say, for aunts, for grandmothers, like for Black women. And I think that we're living through a time where Black women's voices are finally getting more central, right? And becoming more heard. Can you talk about what that has meant to you to see more of that space opened up and to see Black women being pushed to the forefront when they're still, as you quoted Malcolm X, the most marginalized? How has that evolution unfolded? How does that feel to you as you put it all dedicated to Black women here?
Yeah, I think it feels hopeful, I feel like that's a lot of what fuels the work that I do. You can't write about these things and the tragedies, the stuff that Black women have experienced, and yet not hold a space for hope that change can come and that something can be different.
Mm,
My perspective is that if I am believing that things can be different for my sisters, that we can find wholeness, that we can find rest, then I have to have hope to believe that we're going to continue on a path forward that's going to, put us in a better trajectory. And seeing Black women thrive in media, movies, film, writing, create, so many creative spaces and faith spaces. It means a lot, because it means that people are listening. It doesn't mean that everybody's listening, and it doesn't mean that everybody's going to treat us right. They
yeah,
aren't.
right.
But it does mean that we're knocking down barriers and opportunities are being opened up for us. And that is so important, because if I can open the door for somebody behind me, then they can open the door for somebody behind them. There is no sense of scarcity. There's enough for all of us. There's enough to go around. And so I want to be a part of breaking down barriers and opening up doors for my sisters, because if I'm here, then you should be too. And I think that's just really kind of the thing that fuels me as a woman and as a creative. I want my sisters to be with me, and I want to see Black women win.
That's so critical. And one of the things that is the work that you do, but I think is so compelling about this book is that you do work in anti-racist space, and you do work for Black women, and you do work in trying to respond collectively to tragedy, and to respond to systematic racism and injustice. What is it that you feel like is the pulse, the need, the push that's getting you through now? Because now we're post the moment where people cared more, right?
Mm-hmm.
During the pandemic, we had this renaissance of okay, all of a sudden Black Lives Matter is on corporate billboards and t-shirts. What is it like doing the work now? What is the push now? Remind us why that work matters and why you're continuing to do that work.
Yeah, I think the work for me, it still matters and is important, because I like to tell people this. If you are able to impact and shape one person, two people, that's going to impact their whole line of family, their generation, the people that they have influence over. And you can never discount what that can do for somebody and what that can do for our society. And so I continue to do the work because I believe in it. I do it in a much more personable scale with people. So I've shifted a lot to doing things on Patreon, engaging with people in more of a one-to-one small group setting.
Mm,
I do not do a lot of engaging or fussing on social media
yeah.
because I just do not have the brain space for that. publicly I've shifted a lot of how I, do discourse around anti-racism, mostly because we live in a very volatile time and it's very divisive.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of good you can do on social media, but at the same time, I don't have any interest in trying to make space even more divisive than it already is. And
Mm.
so I'm finding ways to continue to tell the truth and speak on things that need to be spoken about. But also, I also like to tell people it's okay that I'm enjoying my life and I'm happy. And I want to share those things too.
Yeah.
And I want those things for Black women. I think we want to save everything and everyone. And people see us with our capes on, but sometimes our capes need to come off and you just need to see us smiling. You need to see us standing outside, soaking up the sun with our feet in the ground, just being happy. And that's just kind of the space that I've been in. I got married, I'm a newlywed. My husband and I bought a house. We have a little
Congrats.
dog,
Congrats.
Thank you. And, this is my season of standing in the sun and I'm enjoying and I'm basking in it. And I get to experience what it feels like to truly be loved and to love somebody else. And that's just really special for me. So I want that for my sisters. I have so many friends who have talked to me about how they want that. And I want to hold space for us as Black women to have, joy and hope and love. And we can still do the work of activism and spreading the word of why it's important to address anti-racism in our communities. We can do both.
I think that's so critical. And I appreciate that you named your joy now is an act of resistance, right? And there's space for that without having to worry about white gaze.
Yeah.
That's so important. One of the things that is a through line in your book, and I really appreciate you hearing about the flourishing now, was this grappling with trying to first live up to white standards and be in that white gaze and try to fit in the boxes that didn't fit for you. And then coming into your own, through the moves, through college, starting to work, like all of that. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important for folks to come into themselves and not have to worry about fitting into the cultural box that whiteness may make, that culture may make, right? Majority culture may make for us? Why is it important that we find our own identity along the way?
Yeah, I think it's so important because you're the only person that has to live with you. And you have to, your own self, be able to come home to you in the most authentic way possible.
Mm.
You can't do that when you're trying to be someone you're just not. And at the end of the day, when you go to sleep and when you wake up, what do you want to think about yourself? When you think about who you are and who you want to be, are you comparing it to somebody who has a different lived experience, cultural experience, everything that is, that might not even relate to you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the thing that freed me the most was realizing that I want to be able to show up as my full self. The only way for me to do that is for me to be able to come home to myself, to who Faith is really, and learning about my family history and asking my grandparents questions. All those things helped me to come home to myself because I had a greater appreciation and understanding for the struggle that they went through, that my great grandparents went through. And it helped me to have an understanding of this is who I am. I am my ancestors' legacy. I have, been formed and loved by Black people. This is my story. And this is why it is so important. I can't relish in this story if I'm trying to deny my Blackness. I can't relish in this history if I'm trying to fit in with white people and them saying, oh, you're one of the good ones. No, we're all
Yeah.
good ones.
Right.
And I didn't want to feel like I had to be betraying myself, betraying my identity or my culture in order to fit in. It is truly like it's kind of like a slow death, if you will, of self whenever you aren't able to show up fully when you're just trying to fit in. So there was a freedom that came with letting go of trying to assimilate. I gained a whole lot of joy that I didn't have before, because I wasn't worried about what I was trying to say or do, or if this is going to upset this person or that person, or, oh, I got to stay away from that topic, or I can't talk about politics, or all these other things. I just let all that go and said, hey, I'm going to show up as my full self. And the people that are with me and that are genuinely friends will stay, and the people that aren't will go. And that's okay.
One of the other things that you talked about that I thought really stuck out to me was how early on you were formed to see yourself as not college material and see yourself as not having to do that kind of work because you were doing ministry or because, you know, whatever. And how you were able to, as you grew, kind of realize like you can be more and at the same time still own that you love people, right? Like, and you're a people person. What was that journey like? Like, what was the thought there? Because I just thought that was so profound. And I think that so many, again, thinking about my little Black daughters, feel like, okay, I like people, so like, you know, school's not really for me because I'm just gonna, you know, take, like, we're trained to be caretakers, right? Black women
Yeah.
are trained to do that, but they're more than that and don't have to do it for everyone else's sake, which you name so much. Can you talk about why, you know, what that journey was like for you and why it's important?
Yeah. So I, was in a multicultural church when I was in high school. And so there was mostly in multicultural and congregation leadership, predominantly white. And a lot of them had gone to like a Bible school or something like that, but they didn't like go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And they just worked at the church, and I just thought that was so cool. I did ministry all the time. I was always volunteering. And so in my head, I really struggled to figure out like what is it that I wanted to do for the rest of my life and get paid for it. Like I just did
Right.
not I was struggling with that. I had such a hard time thinking of what that was going to be. And I really think that we need to give young people a little bit more grace as they're trying to understand themselves and discover themselves,
Mm,
because it is really a lot of pressure to try to figure it out by 18
yeah.
what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And we all know that, sometimes you don't always end up doing what you went to school for.
Listen,
So,
who does nowadays, right?
yeah. So it's a lot of pressure for young people to have it figured out.
One of the things that stuck out a lot to me, just in addition to that journey you were taking in owning yourself in the midst of the culture that was trying to put you in boxes and loving your authentic self, was just how you were able to wrestle through what a lot of folks are doing now with seeing that there is space for you to be fully Christian and not have to reject your faith in order to be your full self as a Black woman. Can you talk about why that's important? And if you want to share a little bit about what your process, you know, the popular way people are saying they deconstructing the reconstruct, but I love the way that you just tell it like, hey, this is me, these are the spaces. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because, deconstruction and all that's kind of like a buzzword right now, but I feel like I have kind of gone on that journey since I graduated college.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Bible school. I had gone to a Christian university, and I was pretty Jesus out by the time I left.
Mm-hmm.
Going to church every day,
Yeah.
and it just felt like it was just a lot for me. And so one of the best things that I think my parents did was, even as an adult, because I'm really close to my parents, was allow me the space to explore my faith
Mm,
and to not equate my church attendance to my love for God.
mm,
Because there was plenty of times throughout my 20s, and even now, that I'm like, I wasn't not at church every Sunday.
mm,
I was not on the pew all the time. I had spent years serving, and even throughout my 20s in different points, I served constantly in church. I was volunteering, I was doing things. And then I just hit a point where I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do that. And I want to explore life without having to be the super volunteer.
Hmm.
And without having to have church as my second, part-time /
Right.
full-time job,
Yep.
exactly. You're my second home. And giving myself that room and that non-judgmental space was the best thing I could have ever done for my faith, because I really realized that it wasn't the attendance, it wasn't the doing, it wasn't all the things that made God real to me. It was the relationship that I had cultivated with God, the things that I had seen God do in my life, the
Mm.
prayers I prayed in private and in secret, and seeing those prayers answered. That is what continued to keep me anchored. God
Mm.
has always been real to me. And, I like to say church people, I can take them or leave them, but God, I got to have. And I just really think for me personally, my journey has been one of realizing that I don't have to work my way to acceptance or perfection in my relationship with God. And once I released myself from feeling like I need to be this perfect Christian, this perfect, like, I got to do this right and that right. And they said, I got to do this for 10 minutes and I got to do that for 15 minutes, and trying to like make myself do all these
Check the
things.
list. Yeah.
Once I released myself from that, I found so much freedom in my relationship with God and engaging with God through prayer and just allowing myself to find freedom in that way. And it's what's kept me anchored. The lack of putting myself in these boxes and thinking I have to do this in order to, be good. All of those things I really put to the side to remind myself of what's the main thing. And at the end of the day, the main thing was that I still wanted to be in relationship with Jesus. I still wanted to find ways for my faith to be expressed that felt good to me.
Hmm.
And if there was something I just didn't agree with or realized, oh man, that probably wasn't that great or that theology is terrible, I just was like, okay, goodbye to it. Like I just said goodbye and
Yeah.
moved on. So um, I never left my faith. I just didn't allow the traditions of what people said I should or shouldn't do to dictate me the way I moved with God anymore. So that's the simplest way for me to say it, I think.
No, I think that that's such a there's so much space in that I feel like people haven't feel like they are not given as they navigate that it's either, oh, okay, I'm with my faith or I'm not, like I'm deconstructing and I gotta leave church, or I'm not, I'm the super volunteer. And I think that you just have created space for us. And again, everyone, I will recommend this book, Find Out How Faith Made Space. To do what she just said, because I think that's powerful. Second to last question, I want to know, a lot of our readers, a lot of folks who are watching us online are wrestling with, okay, I'm young, I'm trying to figure out certainly relationships, and you talk about them from every aspect. And I love, you talk about parents, you talk about ancestors, you talk about sisters, you talk about, community building. Um, what is it that you want to say about relationships and why they matter and how we can have healthy, positive relationships as we're growing into ourselves?
Yeah, I feel like your relationship with your grandparents, if you have them, if they're still around and still alive, are so important, because those are people who have gone before you and they know the stories of their parents, and you might not know your great grandparents, and learning those stories is so essential to your identity, and then to understanding them and even your own parents. And I think when it comes to your relationship with your mom and your dad, or the people that raised you, it is so important to get to know them as an adult.
Mm.
We, as children, know them as our, they're our guides. They love us, they discipline us. But as an adult, you can become friends with your parents. And that comes with its own layers of ups and downs and finding boundaries and figuring out how, your relationship will function. But I think it's really important to create space not only for their humanity, but yours too.
Mm.
And I love talking about relationships with parents because I have a great relationship with my parents. It has not come without any level of difficulty, though. We've had our moments,
Mm.
we've had disagreements, hurt feelings, where we have to talk through things. But we understand one another, and we have mutual respect. And because of that, I have such a healthy outlook on life and on the kind of parent I hope to be one day, because I have such supportive parents in my life. And having them, it's like one of the most important relationships. And when it comes down to your sisters and people that are going to ride for you, you don't need a lot of them, but you need a few good ones. And I write about that in the book because oftentimes people can become loners
Mm-hmm.
and just want to ride the wave of being by themselves, but you can't. You need community. You need all of these people. And I want to speak to people in relationships because I didn't get married till I was 31. And growing up in the South, that was considered older.
Right.
Um,
Right. Where you
and it,
looking at?
yeah, people in the South, they get married like 19, 20, and
Right.
21. And so, I spent a lot of my 20s being the only or being the third wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to write to people to encourage them when it comes to relationships. We've all gone through our ups and downs and bumps, but there is a way and a space that I wanted to hold for my sisters who are still hoping for love or desiring for those things to happen for them. So overall, I just believe relationships are vital to our development and to who we are as people. And we all need community. We can't exist in isolation. And so I wanted to highlight those groups because those are groups that have been vital to me. And I wouldn't be who I am without them, without my grandparents' wisdom, my parents' support, my sisters just uplifting me and having adventures with me. And now being able to build a life with my husband, all of those people are so important. And I think we have to remember that as we go on.
Absolutely. So, last question. What advice would you give to a young woman who is right now in a space trying to win, right? She wants to be successful, right? She's trying to figure out what that even means. What advice would you give to the young women out there who are getting your book, Remember Me Now, and trying to find themselves in their next step?
Yeah, I would say yes to everything that you can. I think when you begin to say yes to different opportunities, different things, and remember that every yes can lead to another yes, a door opens can lead to another door open. It all kind of adds up. And I think that if you're in the season of life, I did this a ton in my 20s. I said yes to a bunch of things
Mm,
because that's the place and space that I was in to be able to do that. I didn't have children, I wasn't married, so I was able to do those things. If you are married, you have a great, spouse that can support you so you can say yes, then do it. I think being able to explore your interest and your hobbies and try new things is absolutely vital to your development,
mm,
vital to you finding your sweet spot in life, what you want to do next, what that looks like for you. You have to say yes, because if you don't, you won't know what to say no to.
mm,
And so when you say yes and you start exploring and you open yourself up and you try new things and you say, oh man, this is great, then you know what direction you want to flow into. You might find a break off of that interest and you niche down into something else and you find your passion. But it takes time and energy to explore it and know why it is you want to do what you want to do. And then what's the avenue by which I can, be creative or make money or find the career for me. I worked several different kind of jobs and different things until I found what I really liked, what I wanted to do, that I wanted to be a part of, working for organizations and nonprofits that did great work. But it
mm.
took a while for me to figure out what that was going to look like. And so all I can say, and the best thing I can say, is to keep saying yes. You just absolutely never know what you're going to discover, what you will explore about yourself, what you will uncover. Go on adventures, just have fun. And over the time of having fun, you will find your passion. You won't have to look too hard for it, it will come to you.
Thank you so much, Faith, for sharing with us. Again, Urban Faith. I'm here with Faitth Brooks. Her book, Remember Me Now, available. Check it out. Find the story. Her story resonated with me. I know it will resonate with so many Black women. I know it'll resonate with Black people. And I appreciate you telling your story, sharing your truth, and making and holding space for us.
Thank you.
All right.